Welcome to episode 76 of the Steady On podcast, Rylie's Arc, with me, Angie Bauman, and my guest today, Meghann Guentensberger. The Bible verse I selected for this episode with Meghann is Galatians 6:9. Hear it from the NIV. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. If we do not give up. It's easy to give up when something gets hard. Some Bibles translate give up as to lose heart. We will reap a harvest if we do not lose heart. Bible commentaries tell us that in ancient world, the phrase translated lose heart was used for the kind of fear and weariness a woman experiences during labor before delivery. It describes a time when the work is hard and painful, but also unfinished and unrewarded. As you listen to Meghann talk about the work she's doing while she grieves the loss of her young daughter, I think you'll connect with how easy it would be for her to lose heart and give up. But she doesn't. And in her unwillingness to quit, I hope you're encouraged to press on too. Let's listen in. Hello, Steady On community, and welcome to this Stronger Together conversation. I'm Angie Bauman, and with me today is Meghann. I'm going to pause. Guentensberger. I know every time I do it, I think I have to say it in my head before I say it out loud. Guentensberger.
Yes.
Now, does anyone ever, how long do they have to know you before they don't pause on your name?
I still pause on my name, so it's all good. Yeah.
Most
people call me Mrs. G or Meghann G. It's just way easier.
Yes. I think names are so important to me, and I try very hard to get them right, and I try very hard to get the spelling right. I don't have an easy name. People mispronounce my name all the time, and it doesn't offend me at all, but there is a familiarity. I don't know what you think about this, Meghann. This is not what we're going to talk about, but I'm going to ask you about that. There's a familiarity. There's a ring of knowing when someone, if you do have kind of an unusual or hard to pronounce name, but there's people in your life that don't stumble on it, right? Or they get to a point where someone just I don't know. There's something about that I think that is very precious.
Yeah, it's a little more intimate, and it's like, okay, you've taken the time to really know me and know all assets.
Yes. And so when I can say Guentensberger without pausing, I'm so glad to have you here today. Meghann is going to talk to us about her daughter, Rylie, and an organization called Rylie's Arc that was formed after Rylie's death. Meghann is a wife and a mom, and she's a writer and a runner. What does a runner mean to you? What are you, like, serious runner? Talk to me about that.
I was not for the longest time, and it is really, it's kind of my therapy and my space. I have learned through actual therapy that in many ways I was literally running away from things, but figuratively, it's the way I process a lot. And I am never going to win anything. I am very much the tortoise, slow and steady. But it's a place where I can just kind of get out of my own head and process things and that. So
when you run, what do you listen to, or nothing?
Nothing. I used to listen to things, and then I was training for an Ironman.
That sounds pretty serious to me.
Well, yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So, I was training for an Ironman in 2017, and on those long races, you can't wear headphones. So that's when I stopped training with anything in my ears, because I figured I had to run 26 miles at that point without entertainment in my head. So I entertained myself with the voices in my head.
Interesting. So why can you not on those competition or long races have something in your ears? I'm just curious.
Generally in races, they frown upon it or actually prohibit it because of safety. They want you to be able to hear things
what's going on around you.
And,
Gotcha.
So, I mean, a lot of people still will do like one earbud or something, but I was just like, I'm a rule follower. So I was like, oh, no headphones. Here I go.
Man, I think that would be really challenging when I don't run at all, but I do love walks. I live in a university town, and we have a beautiful campus lake. It's not very long at all from where I am. And it's about 2 miles around the lake, and I walk that frequently, but one of the things I always do, I listen to worship music or I listen to a podcast or something because it's just, yeah. And I'm thinking about running for that length of time with just my own thoughts. And it actually kind of scares me just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm walking, I absolutely am listening to a podcast, an audiobook or something like that, because otherwise I feel like I can't slow myself down enough to not run. But when I'm running, I think I'm just concentrating on not dying.
Yes. Fair enough.
I'm like, okay, I can do this.
Well, I invited you to talk about your daughter, is Rylie. And so I wondered if you would just share a little bit with us about Rylie, who Rylie was. What would you like us to know about Rylie and her life? And how did her life inspire you to start what you call Rylie's arc?
Yeah. Today's actually kind of a special day, and it was just a kind of a fluke that we got to talk today because today is Rylie's birthday.
Oh my goodness. Well, happy heavenly birthday, Rylie. Yes.
Yes. So
yes,
she would have been 17 today.
My goodness.
And a senior in high school, but she died when she was 12 and a half, going on 20.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was just an amazing young lady. As parents, we have our children and many times we love them so much and we think the world of them. And then there's the times that we want to disown them. But for the most part, we knew Rylie was a special girl. But it was after we had the accident that she and I were in, that we really realized her impact. So I was training for the Ironman that I was just telling you about, and needed some new running shoes. And Rylie and I went out to go get some running shoes and just have a girls' day. Grab some lunch, go to Target, hit the makeup aisle, get some new running shoes. While I was, of course, like ticking away at all the things I should have been doing instead of enjoying time with my daughter, which in hindsight is a lesson learned. But, and it was during our trip to the running store that we were in this accident. And there was a woman in the parking lot who had a medical emergency, and she passed out at the wheel and drove through the store where we were shopping. And that was what ultimately led to Rylie's passing. But we were in the hospital with her for 28 days before she died. And it was those 28 days that we learned kind of that magic of who she was. I would have told you before, like she's a girl that gives you a hug. She always wanted to make people smile. She was a people pleaser. And what we've learned since then is that, yes, those things were very true, but she just really had a heart for other people. And she would do simple things that didn't cost anything other than maybe some time and some forethought. Because she was 12 and a half. I mean, who has money at 12 and a half? But, and she would just do things to touch people. So she was notorious for writing notes or motivational quotes down and giving them to people. They were always misspelled. She could not spell to save her life. So, and, she would create these little notes and she would tuck them away for people, or, run up and give you a big hug and tilt her head and just giggle at you and be like, you needed that, and then run away, and just little things that would touch people. And as her mom living in those moments, I knew those and I saw them. But it wasn't until after the accident and while she was in the hospital and then after she died that we started to hear that those moments had really impacted people more than just the mom, I'm the mom and, oh, aren't you cute for doing these things, And so that was really how Rylie's ARC was born, because ARC is an acronym for Acts of Random Kindness. And so that was just what Rylie did. She loved to make people happy. And kind of to your point about knowing people's names earlier, she was the person who really wanted to make sure everyone was seen and heard. I think many times she felt unseen and unheard, and that may have prompted her to go above and beyond in seeing others. She would just do anything. She was the queen of giving gifts. Again, nothing that she bought. She was just always making things. She's the girl that on October 1st would have her Christmas presents done. Meanwhile, I'm the like, it's December 24th. Oh no, what am I going to get for people
I
for
forgot
Christmas?
it was coming. Right. Yeah.
So, and she always there was always thought put into whatever gift it was. She made me she went to the dollar store, like called my mom and said, "Hey, Nana, can you take me to the store? I want to get a couple of things." And she got this little milk bottle and painted it with my name on it and found some of my favorite colored pens and put them in there. And they weren't the great ones, but it was like, Mom, I know you're grading essays and I want you to have your favorite colored pens. That was the kind of thing she would do.
And intentionality, a gift like that, it doesn't matter that they're the greatest, because what it says is I watch, I listen, I pay attention to what makes you happy or makes things convenient or whatever. And so I'm going to do what I can to honor who you are. And so, yeah, I feel that as you're talking about her, where she really did. She's like, I'm trying to pay attention to what would make you happy. And so even though they may not have been the highest quality pens, it does make you very happy, right? Because you're like,
right.
I didn't even know you were listening. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that was that intentionality. And so that has been, I think, the greatest gift and lesson that my husband and our son and I and our community have learned from this is just the power of intentionality and presence. I look back 4 years ago. So she passed away in 2017. And I would say 4.5 years ago, I was a very different person. And I'm sure in another 4 years, I'll be a very different person. I mean, that is life, but the ways that I've changed are definitely very impacted by what I've learned from Rylie and her wisdom at 12 and a half. Because I have always been a checklist person. I've always had the running list of all the things that I should be doing versus what I want to do or need to be doing, and I've always put others first, but not necessarily in the right order.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a teacher by trade.
Okay.
And, there were for years, my kids would come with me to school in the morning and we would get there at the butt crack of dawn and they would sit in my classroom and just be like, "Oh, Mom, we don't have to actually be here for 2 more hours." And then at the end of the day, it would be like, "Oh no, just a couple more things," or, and then it would be 6 or 7 at night before we would leave. And in hindsight, I look at those moments of the time that I would spend meticulously grading an essay or trying to make a lesson perfect or filling out whatever form or, whatever it was. And the trade-off between what could have been had I chosen to close the book, let it sit there and go take my kids and grab a slushie at the gas station on our way home and have a meaningful conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Or just agree to when they're like, "Hey, Mom, can we have popcorn before doing homework?" My answer was always no, because we had this running list, right?
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like maybe that popcorn snack would have been an opportunity that we would have shared a story or heard something or stepped into something instead of a running list.
So I want to stay there for just a second because I hear an interesting combination in your story right now, because I hear a recognition of growth, because you said a couple of times you've said in hindsight, which means to me, I look at that now and I think I might wish that I'd have done it differently, or I might do it differently now, but I don't hear a tremendous, I don't hear shame. I'm going to put it that way. I don't hear that in you. And so something about you, it feels like to me, has reconciled that and you are at some peace with that anyway. Will you, I don't want to put words in your mouth though. Will you talk to us a little bit about that? Because it stirs up in me a lot of hope that I could look, but I tend to look at my past and recognize things I wish I'd have done differently. And I feel maybe, like wrong or small or something, but that's not what I'm hearing from you.
and that's taken a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine. Yes.
Yeah. Because 4.5 years ago, I would have seen those things, and I would know in my head, like, oh, this is what I should be doing. You know, as if I was a good parent, that was a mantra. If I was a good parent, I would fill in the blank. And to be fair, that those words still come in my head. But I think I'm more aware now, and I might see those moments. It doesn't mean I always act on them, but I see them more proactively, I guess, than retroactively. But the shame thing is real.
Yes, it
is. I think we look out at our friends, we look out on social media, we look at TV, whatever, and we see this image of what we should be as the perfect parent, the perfect teacher, the perfect pastor, the perfect whatever. And none of that is real. But it's so easy to fall into that. Oh, I'm not doing enough. I'll never get it right. And I think that's a piece of what I've been learning is, no, I'm still never going to get it right.
Yes.
I did agree to take my son to school today, like drive him to school rather than make him walk, because I had a few minutes, even though I was like, oh, but I could use that few minutes to get this other thing done. So yes, I said yes when he asked, hey, Mom, can you drive me to school? And I wouldn't maybe have done that before, and I would have definitely beat myself up over it. But I also told him, no, I'm not bringing you Chick-fil-A to lunch or to school at lunch. And he tried to guilt trip me. And I was like, oh, could I fit that in? And, and yes, there's still that shame. But you have to kind of hold that and look at it. And I think I'm learning to look at those moments for what they could be, and to look at what those trade-offs might be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for talking more about that. Cause I think that's really encouraging to us, because especially when we grieve something, and we grieve a lot of things, and not, of course your grief is over a death, and most of us have something like that in our life too, but there's a lot of other things that we grieve. And I think it's very easy for guilt and lies to be all tangled up in that grief, because that can just really hold us down, and it prevents the Lord's work from, making something, I don't want to use cliches, but making something beautiful out of something that's really hard, and those things being able to share space. Cause I don't think, at least in my story, like, I don't think that the beauty is like, oh, now the hard didn't happen. It's not like that at all, but can it share space, and you can see what has grown and flourished, even from a place that at first seemed only dark and lonely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there's such a juxtaposition, but also, I guess, beauty in looking at grief with resilience. Ooh. And that idea of, a flower that can grow in the crack of concrete, or or be in the wake of a forest fire. There's that thing that still continues to grow and is nourished by the destruction. And I think grief is very much that way. There's a level of destruction, whether it's grief over a death, or recovering from, overcoming or recovering something like abuse and neglect, or the very real grief of, I lost my favorite pen. I mean, I kind of joke about that with people, but I think people put grief in this big bucket, and they feel like it has to be huge, but it doesn't, because sometimes you lose your favorite pen and it really is, you're like, oh, what am I going to do?
Yes. I remember whenever I spoke, I had this cup that I always used, right? It was part filled with water with a little bit of Crystal Light peach mango tea. Like, I had this thing, but I always, when I spoke, and it was always in this same cup with the pretty flowers on it. And I loved it. And inside, when I was going to speak at a church one day, I dropped it and it broke in the parking lot. And I'm like, that cup has been with me through all kinds of things. Like, it's comforting, like, right. So, and I told, there was a woman that I was working with that day, I'm like, I dropped my favorite cup in the parking lot. And she's like, you'll get a new favorite. I mean, like, and I'm like, oh no, I
don't understand.
This matters more than that, right? Yeah. Like, so I know what you're talking about. I mean, just about loving something like that, where you're like, it's not a big deal. And yet, it does make you pause sometimes, because most of the time it's not even, it's not about the tangible thing like your pen or something, but it is like, it's somehow it brought you some sense of security that was swiftly taken away. And I don't know, it messes with you a little bit. It shakes that confidence, I think. Yeah.
And I think it can incite those other feelings that we tend to stamp down about the bigger things too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. It stirs up something else. Yeah, exactly. So you talk about two choices that you had during this tragedy and since the tragedy, learning or letting what happened to you beat you down. And I think no matter what, like whether it's, the cup or the tragic loss of a child, we have choices every day about the things that happen to us, whether it's a minor inconvenience, but we blow it up into something, or it's something really serious, like that happened, like for me in my past a long time ago. And yet when it raises its ugly head, what do we do? So talk to us a little bit about that choice that you feel like probably you had, and I bet still have, about letting it help you grow or beat you down.
It's a daily choice.
Yes.
For
I would
us.
say even hourly sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there are definitely days where I can wake up in the morning and go about my day. And in this weird way, all of a sudden you go to bed at night and I'm like, I didn't really think about Rylie today. And it's not that I didn't think about her, because she's always here and part of our life. But we've gotten to a point where there are days that it goes by like quote unquote normal, right?
Yeah.
And then there are the days where I have to make a conscious choice every minute, every hour, whatever, of like, okay, I could wallow in these feelings of why am I outliving my daughter? Why did this little girl who impacted hundreds of people by writing notes and giving hugs and all those things get taken away? But I wish I could tangibly explain how both Ziggy, my husband, and I knew that it was going to be this choice and we could let it beat us down or let it bring us up, but we just knew. And I think part of it is her spirit. We kind of joke that there's certain things that we think if we don't do something a certain way, like Rylie's going to haunt us, And I just know that because of her spirit, she wouldn't want us to lay in bed and pull the covers over our head. Are there days that I want to lay in bed and pull the covers over my head? Absolutely. But on those moments or in those days, I try to just kind of sit there and think, okay, how would Rylie have reacted in this moment? And she probably would have thrown herself on the ottoman and like wailed about the unfairness of things. But then she would have gotten up and been like, all right, I've had my little temper tantrum. I'm going to go now do something good with it. And I think that's the image that I just kind of hold close on those days where I have to make that choice. And I think when you go through hard things like this, there's a level of tolerance that changed for me. And in many ways, my tolerance increased because I'm always like, there's something somebody's going through. Maybe they're acting a certain way, but it's because of something that I don't know. And in some ways it decreased because I'm kind of like, does the fact that your daughter or son only made vice president of student council really matter? No,
Yeah.
So there's this weird balance there. But it's still just remembering that we have a choice in how we react to those moments. And I would be lying to all of you if I said, oh yeah, I always make the right choice. Oh, heck no. Absolutely not. Do I snark at people? Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I hear you saying in that you are deciding also about what to have grace for. And because I think when you go through something really hard, it can really increase your empathy in a lot of things, because I think maybe we have the opportunity to assume people are going through hard things, and that can increase our grace, right? Even if we don't know their story. Right. But then we see other things and we're just like, you don't know what I know. and you shouldn't, and that
Yes.
is not, or don't act like, or don't endanger someone, with that behavior or something like that, because you don't know the high cost that your decision could. And so I've found myself in like both ways. I think I have greater grace in some ways. And then in other ways, I find myself to be a lot less tolerant sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about community, because I think you've also learned a lot about community and what that's meant for you in your situation with grief and with Rylie's death. How has the tragedy affected how you both give to and receive from community?
Yeah. So I grew up moving all of the time.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much like a military brat, and that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean.
It's your story. You can frame it how you want. Yeah.
But my dad was a geologist, and so we moved with the coal mines like people move with the military. And so I never really lived anywhere longer than, 2 or so years growing up. And then as an adult, it was like I lived 6 years in Michigan and thought, wow, I've
been here forever. Yeah.
But then we moved out here to Colorado, where we've now been almost 11 years, which is unbelievable to me. But it was here that we started to really build community, and we have strong community back in Michigan, again, because we had a little bit of time and, the ability to build some community there. But I look back at my childhood and this idea of community. I was like, this doesn't exist. I don't have grade school friends. I struggled to find people to stand up for my wedding because I just didn't know anyone long enough.
Yep.
But I look now at how people can wrap around each other and come together. And I'm amazed by that power of community. And in this loss, there were definitely times where I had in my mind, oh, this friend is going to show up in this way. Like they're going to be here. And I never thought somebody else might. And what was crazy and still is crazy to me is sometimes those roles flip. We have in our mind that we think someone's going to show up in a certain way, and then they don't, or they can't, is usually more often. They just don't know how to step into that. And then somebody comes in from like the wings, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where did you come from?
Yeah.
And I think that was something that has really struck a chord for me and for Ziggy. And as we looked at trying to build Rylie's Arc, which is first and foremost a community that practices kindness, it was that idea of how do we bring people together and understand whether you've been somewhere 2 months, 2 years, or 10 years, when we wrap around each other in a meaningful way, it bolsters strength, and it just allows everyone to really kind of come together, grow together, be vulnerable, but stronger than they would be on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think it's hard to, it's easy to believe the lie. Let me say it this way. For me, to believe the lie that in order to be impactful in someone's hurt, like I need to have known them since first grade. Like it's those people. I don't know how to say, I didn't say that very well, but you know what I mean? Like it's those people. They have these people that are around them that know them better, and I don't belong in that.
Yep.
But I have learned over the past few years, maybe since about 11 years ago, my family was in a head-on car crash and we were all injured very bad. And we couldn't, we had these surgeries and therapy and, all these things. And there were these people that came around, and it taught me something because one, I didn't have friends from first grade. So that they weren't coming because they didn't exist. Right. Yeah. And also like you're saying, like some of the places that meant so much to me, that help that came, and people who did really practical things in that time aren't people that are like really that close to me. And so it made me not believe that I needed to have some kind of intimate understanding of every nuance of their life in order to have something to offer. And that changed something in me, that situation. Yeah. And I appreciate you lifting that up.
Yeah, I think that's a very true point. And I think oftentimes we can get in situations where someone we know might need something, and then we start to kind of judge ourselves or wonder like, well, what could I possibly
talk
give
ourselves out of it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the gifts that I found the most impactful, and still to this day find the most impactful, is presence.
Yes.
Not with a T, but
Yes.
being present with someone. And I default to thinking, oh, I have to cook a dinner and bring it over. Or, oh, I have to come and sit and distract them with something. And the reality is, it's just having someone who is nearby and willing to sit in that awkward discomfort or that silence. I think we often feel like we have to fill the space, but the only thing we need to do is fill the space by being there.
Yes.
Being available, and willing to just sit and not say anything or cry alongside or laugh, even when you are like, oh, this was so inappropriate to laugh.
Yes.
But it's the way we express our emotions and just being with people that matters.
Yeah. So if people are interested in Rylie's arc, will you tell us like what happens in that community? What's your goal with it?
Yeah. So, like I said, we're first and foremost community, because I think that if each person does something simple, if they channel their inner Rylie and they write a note, or they give a hug, or they just take time to open a door, look someone in the eyes and smile and say, hope you have a great day. It ripples out. And we talk about kindness as ripples, right? These little things that we do have more impact than these giant things that we think we have to do a lot of times. So we're first and foremost that community, and we do different things to just encourage people to practice kindness in whatever way makes sense for them. So on our social media and newsletters and all of those things, it's oftentimes just encouragement to do the little thing. But then as an organization, we pool the resources and we pool the talents and all of that of our community to do the bigger thing, and to be able to do what we call waves of kindness, right? Yeah. So you pool all those ripples together and now you have a wave. And so there's some really great things happening. We talk about creating a big impact through small acts. And then we coined this really great phrase. It sounds so good on marketing material. In practice, it's a little different, but it's creating joy for the underheard. And it's the underheard part that we were like, oh, this is perfect. There's the underserved groups, and there are resources and organizations that support them. And the underheard is this group that is quietly putting their head down. They're going to figure out how to make it work. They're never going to ask for help. Hence the problem, because they don't ask for help.
Yes.
So how do we find them? But what we do is really try to spark joy, because that was something that was really important to Rylie.
Yeah.
So we don't cover, mortgages or pay electrical bills, but we will do the things that bring joy for people. So we've kept kids enrolled in hockey for a season, or we've sent people to summer camp for a week when they didn't think that they were going to be able to do that. We actually next week are opening our Be Happy Boutique, and it's just a pop-up shop, but we're going to be giving away hundreds of homecoming dresses so that high schoolers don't have to think, oh, I can't go to homecoming because I can't afford the dress.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. They're going to come in, shop in quotation marks for the dress, and get to walk out and feel amazing and go and enjoy some time with their friends.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with Halloween costumes. So it's all these things that bring joy and might be a hand up instead of a hand out.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. And it helps bridge that isolation gap or something. Because I think that when people feel like they're the only ones that don't have the money for a homecoming dress or can't get the Halloween costume or something, then it helps bridge that, that feeling of, it helps cover maybe that feeling of isolation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful really work. Mm-hmm.
We did the dress store for prom this past spring, and the stories that we heard of people that maybe didn't think they were going to get to, and then they happened upon us, or we had people come that were like, I was going to pay for a dress anyway, so here, let me donate this money. I get a dress that doesn't look the same as everyone else's. And it was just so fun to see those stories. And it is that bridge that you were talking about of we're coming together and we all bring something.
Yeah. It levels the playing field a little bit too,
Yes.
I think. Yeah. I didn't know Rylie, but I have this immense feeling as I talk to you that she would be incredibly proud of you in this work. So I don't know if you feel that. Probably not every day you don't, but I feel it today. So I'm so grateful for your willingness to talk about her and the work that you're doing and what you've learned through this really hard part of your story. Before I let you go, I always close on this question. I wonder if you will give us just a glimpse into the life of Meghann. Is there anything at all right now that you are reading, listening to, what's in your earbuds, on your nightstand, watching? Anything goes, or nothing at all that's just bringing you joy, keeping you connected with God right now?
I am a recovering English teacher, so I love to read. And
plus a writer. And so,
and I'm a writer. Yeah, exactly. So it's like all the
words,
things,
words.
Yes. And I have such eclectic taste because I cannot get enough of Ted Lasso, which is just good-hearted humor, right? And a good young adult fiction book makes me really happy. But then I'm also reading right now, When Breath Becomes Air, which is a story of a neurosurgeon who became really ill and learned some lessons and things like that. And then I'm listening to, oh my gosh, Prayers in the Night.
Okay.
So I just have all these things that I love to listen to and read and just kind of ponder, because I think that is one of the most amazing gifts that we've all been given, is this ability to take in information, let it marinate, whether I'm on a long run or sitting in the car, or washing my hair, whatever it is, and to let that sit in our hearts and see what gifts might be there for us.
I love that. I love it. Thank you for sharing those. Meghann can be found at MeghanNGuentensberger.com, and I will link that because I don't expect you to know how to spell it right. And also you can find at Rylie'sArk.org. You can find more information about Rylie's Ark, and also on social media. They're on Facebook and Instagram. And I will link all of those things in today's show notes. And Meghann, again, I just can't thank you enough for sharing your story and spending this time with us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Friend, until next time, thanks for listening. Peace. Thank you so much to Meghann for sharing Rylie with us today, and especially for recording with me on the day that would have been Rylie's birthday. That is such a gift to us. If you are hurting today, please know that you're not alone. So many of us have hard stories, my friend, and the enemy would love to set up camp in your pain and tempt you to believe the lies that your story and you are unappreciated, are forgotten, are unredeemable. Nothing could be further from the truth. God sees you, God calls you his own, and God desires to walk right by you in whatever challenge you may be facing. And he is still calling you to kingdom work. Please don't give up on yourself or on him. Galatians 6:9 one more time says, and this time I'm going to share it with you from the Passion Translation. It says, "Don't allow yourselves to be weary in planting good seeds, for the season of reaping the wonderful harvest you've planted is coming." Next week on the Steady On podcast, I will welcome Leanna Tinkersley, who will share with us how God opened her heart to the idea of holding on to hope while walking through an unexpected and painful divorce. If you'd like to support the ministry of Steady On, there are 3 things you can do, and they are all free. First, you can subscribe to the podcast. That helps a ton. Second, you can rate and review the podcast because that helps other people find us. And lastly, you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter by visiting the website livesteadyon.com and clicking the orange newsletter button at the top. The link for that is also in today's show notes. I always welcome comments and feedback. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime by emailing steadyonpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.